Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Today being Wednesday, the 5th day of July 2017. It's been quite a few days since we've been on For the Record. I had my friend from New York. He was out in California, and when he returned on Monday, he returned on the weekend, and he was listening to Radio Cayman as he always does on Monday. And he called me, didn't get me on Monday. We spoke yesterday. He said, "What happened to your show on Monday?" I said, "Oh, Monday was a holiday. That's why." So we're back on here after a long break as well. I want to thank you, and I trust that everyone had a great holiday weekend, that it was safe, enjoyable. And those who have jobs to go to are back at work as well. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman, and by extension For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. Of course, For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orit Connor. My two co-hosts, Dr. Steve Macfield and Ms. Teresa Pitcairn, and you're welcome to join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Our phone lines are always open. There is always someone there waiting to take your calls. 9 times out of the 10, it is that beautiful radio voice of Ms. Susan Watson. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flo. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. Of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, you can email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. Before I welcome back into the studio, all the way from St. Petersburg and in Moscow, Russia, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn, I just want to extend a few thank yous. First of all, to the Garden Club of Cayman for the sterling work that they did, along with their volunteers and the volunteers from the Cayman Islands Scout Association, the Girls Guides, and the Girls Brigade on Monday at our Scout headquarters that will be shared with the Girls Brigade and the Girls Guide, located on Middle Road. And the Garden Club donated, in terms of labor and equipment and plants and everything, over $5,000 to help us to landscape our the grounds of our headquarters, and we're extremely thankful to them for that. I don't want to name names because in fear of missing someone out, but Garden Club, again, we want to say thank you very much for that. I want to say thanks to all the scouters and their families who came out, as well as the guides and the brigade, Girls Brigade as well. So we want to be extremely thankful for their assistance doing that. The Cayman Islands Scout Association, one of the oldest organizations in the Cayman Islands. And if any government officials are listening, we're going to be coming to you talking about what the Scouts have done, what we're capable, continue to do, and what we're capable of doing as well in terms of addressing some of the social issues here in the Cayman Islands. And of course, as a result of that, we will need some additional funding. We're extremely thankful for government for giving us a long-term lease on the property, as well as the then nation building fund that also contributed money, and all of the other private organizations out there that donated to help us build headquarters at a cost of over $1 million CI dollars. Extremely thankful, but the work is not yet over. We're still waiting for a certificate of occupancy as well. We understand that the planning department, they're extremely busy at this point in time, but the quicker we can get in, the better. We plan on having probably a soft opening at first, and then we want to have something big. We want to include the whole community in our opening ceremonies as well. So I just wanted to put a plug in for the Scouts Association. Big time, long time in the Cayman Islands, but we need support. We also need support from former Scouters as well. There are many Caymanians who are doing well financially and otherwise now, who were brought up through the Scouting movement as well, and we extend our arms to them, seeking whatever help they can give as well. So with my free plug this morning for the Scouts Association, Ms. Teresa, Dr. Steve McField, welcome back. You look really nice and fresh from that 2-week jaunt over to the other side of the pond. Welcome back, Ms. Teresa.
Thanks very much, and thanks also to the listening audience. Good morning. Suffering a little bit from jet lag because from St. Petersburg to Frankfurt is about 3 hours, but from Frankfurt to Miami, that's 10 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, so, I'm a little jet lagged this morning. But again, really, really happy to be at home. You learned so much, and, you were able to compare what we have here and meet some really extraordinary people and find an opportunity also to actually be a sort of a quasi-representative for Cayman, because some of the members of the judicial committees that I met were, like the guy Neil Eggleston. He used to be the counsel for the Obamas, while he was in office. So I had an opportunity to spend some time with him and others, and we were able to talk a little bit about Cayman, the sort of rumors, I call it, that they have about Cayman versus what we actually do here. And that actually triggered a very informative conversation, because, of course, I suggested that charity begins at home. Mm-hmm. So they should check out what goes on in Delaware and see whether or not we don't have a superior product here compared to what exists in Delaware. But all in all, it was good. Russia is really, really beautiful. Well, the places that we were allowed to visit, wonderful museums, art galleries, amazing service experience. In fact, when you look at the service industry as we saw it, it was just amazing. People really went out of their way to make you feel comfortable, to make you feel at home, to ensure that, and I mean, even with the language differences, one of the terms I was able to pick up was placebo, which is thank you, for their kindness. They just were really decent. And it gave me a moment for pause, as I said, to think about what we offer here in our service industry and consider whether or not, we could do a better job. Mm-hmm. But glad to be back home. Thankful for the opportunity that our audience is providing us to share some of our views by way of discussion.
Okay, and just again for the benefit of our viewing and listening audience, your role in FIFA now, what is it?
Right, so they have 3 judicial divisions, and I'm in the disciplinary committee, and I am a member of that committee, but it looks as though we have 2 women that are involved in this particular committee, and there are 4 of us that are lawyers, and because of the workload, they're going to try and reduce it. There's like a backlog of about 400 cases. Wow. And they want to ensure that a woman is always in attendance. But, most people have full-time jobs, so we have to be efficient about the way in which we go about doing it. And I may well be in the role of a deputy from time to time because of my legal background and because they need a woman on board when they're doing the reviewing matters.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a really it was an honor to be there, and also to see how football is truly a transformative sport. It has the ability to change lives in such and I mean this is over and above the kind of crazy money that people like Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, I'm talking about transforming small villages and developing people to become meaningful and contributing to community. Yeah.
Yep. Dr. Steve, welcome again. I trust you had an enjoyable long holiday weekend.
Thank
and
you.
you heard me on hitting up the scouts and bigging them up just now. And I know that you were a former scout as well and went to jamborees and all of that stuff also.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And thank you. Welcome back, Teresa. Oh, yes.
Dr. Steve.
And good morning to your listening audience, locally and abroad. Yes, I was, the scout was like a refuge for me as a young teenager. First, I was in the Cubs with Miss Frances Borden and Noel Johnson, and Miss
Ms. Joyce?
Miss Joyce Hilton were my Cub masters, mistress and masters, and then I got invested into the Scouts. Never forget that evening behind the old base. I got invested into the Scouts. I was a Scout leader. I was a leader of the Swan Patrol.
Okay.
And in my patrol was people like Niels Godfrey, Boy D. Bird, Harold Bird, we used to call him, and a lot of more people. And so at 15 years old, I was carrying the flag for Cayman in Jamaica. A lot of us, and another person in that group that went off to Jamaica was Buell Jefferson, which is the financial secretary's father.
Okay.
Warner Bernard, who's now deceased. Harold Bird, who's now deceased. Parson, Caller Parson, who's now deceased, and Trent McMillan, who's living. So I think there are only three of us living now. Mr. Also Melanie McCoy was a scoutmaster from Northside, and Mr. Warner Jackson, who's now deceased, and Teacher McField. And so we had a good time in those days. I don't think the scout today is like it was in the days when we were scouts, because we were actually on a ship. We were sea scouts. We were actually on a ship, and everything we did was in maritime metaphor.
Right. Even the camps, on land and stuff like that. The whole campsite was in the shape of a ship.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And we had to take watches.
Yep.
We had to take watches, and so thanks for the scouts. A lot of people see when I was growing up, a lot of people used to see the shoes shine and the shirts tucked in and the pants seamed, and they would say, "Well, how do you get that?" And I say, "It's the scouts," because I remember when we went on parade, and we were good on parade. We were at Dobson Hall, and people don't know what Dobson Hall was a hall built for the scout by Colonel Dobson, and down on the waterfront. And we would go on Dobson Hall, and we would stay there overnight when we had to go on parade the next day. We would carry all our clothes there. We would put them on, and Teacher McField would come and Warren Jackson and all, they would come and inspect our hats and our shoes and our belts and stuff. And if your shoes weren't shiny, then you could see you face them across the street. They would not let you join the parade.
And your woggle, those days, those little round nuts that you would pick up on the beach, you would take those and cut them out, and
Yes.
it was a woggle was made of natural material.
Natural material for your scarf. And I think the only thing that I didn't have at that time was the Queen Scout's badge.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
I had every badge that you get except this Queen Scout badge too.
Great. Well, I'm hoping that you have retained some of those, because those are the things that we would like to have in our building and on display for our artists. I know, for instance, Mark Scotland still has his scout cap and stuff like that, and I'm hoping to get some from him. I've spoken to George Hunter. He's going to speak to his brother, Mr. Arthur Hunter, as well, because, as you know, Mr. Clifton Hunter was big in the scouts as well, and to see what memorabilia they may have also that they may want to donate or to loan to us as well. And I'll use this media now to invite any other old scouters, if they have any scouting memorabilia and they want to share it with us, please get in contact with me, 916-0135. We're going to commercial break. When we return, we want to talk about the real date, the date for our Constitution when it came into effect. Seems to be some confusion about that. We want to see if we can clarify that. One of our listeners has posed that question to us. So please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Morning and welcome back to For the Record. Received an email. This actually came through on the 1st of July, which would have been on a Saturday. And I trust that the writer is listening this morning. And the writer states, all my life I have been taught and told that Constitution Day was the 5th of July, but it is celebrated on the first Monday of July, which of course ranges probably from the 1st to the 6th. I know that your co-host and panelists are very knowledgeable on history, but I was so surprised to hear that the 4th of July is our Constitution Day. Could you clarify that? What is the actual date? Dr. Macfield.
Well, the actual date is the 4th of July. And our history demonstrates that the last sitting of the Legislative Assembly of Justices and Vestry took place on the 3rd of July, 1959. And the speeches are made by some of them members should be made public to the public so that they can see what the old Justice and Vestry said on that day. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the section 3 of the Constitution, it says, the day appointed under Section 2 of the Jamaica Constitution, Order in Council 1959, is hereby appointed in accordance with Section 1 of the Cayman Islands and Turks and Caicos Islands Act 1958, and for that purpose of that act. So that act says that the Constitution would come into effect on the 4th of July. And as I was coming in this morning, I heard people on another radio station say there was no particular day. And because the 4th of July comes on different days of the week, it comes on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, our government has accepted and has declared that the first Monday in July is the day to celebrate the Constitution Day. So, but the actual Constitution Day was yesterday. It was the 4th of July yesterday.
Okay, and I'll very quickly I'll read from another document also. Yes. Dr. Steve says that in spite of the uncertainties of who the Cayman Islands would join on July 4th, 1959, the Cayman Islands received their first written constitution by royal order in council as well. That's it.
Yes, and it's very interesting to see some of the speeches of Mr. Berkeley Bush, Dukan Marion, Mr. Ormond Panton, T.W. Farrington, Mr. Ormond Panton's father, Mr. Ashwood Panton, Mr. Eope Lincoln Borden from East End. It's very important for that we get all this history out to our people so that our people can be aware of where they came from and who they are, because to say that there's no real day is not true. And the 4th of July is our Constitution Day, and it coincides with the 4th of July of the U.S. Independence Day. Mm-hmm. So we share those two dates together, but we celebrate ours on the first Monday in July.
Okay. And just for a point of clarity, that other radio station that you were talking about, certainly wasn't Radio Cayman News.
No, it
that
was
you
not.
heard
It was not.
We won't call names, but
it was not
it
Radio
wouldn't have been
Cayman.
Radio Cayman.
Yes.
Mr. Risa, before we go to news, we want to talk a little bit more about Russia and your trip. We can't let you go away for 2 weeks and then come back and tell us a whole lot about it.
No, but I have to thank both you and Dr. McField for pointing out a word that I used just now when I said that we were allowed to go to certain places. I wasn't suggesting that there were any limitations or restrictions in Russia, but I was saying that within the context of those of us that were there in a certain capacity, and we had to show, we had to communicate a message of being completely independent. So, for example, my son said to me, Mama, don't come back unless you have a picture with Cristiano Ronaldo. And I said, David, I can't go downstairs and meet with those guys. I said, I would love to. So he says, well, Mom, I know that you say that Mr. Infantino is all that, but okay, what about Pele? Can you come back with a picture of you and Pele? So I got in that kind of conversation with David about so it was really in that context that I was speaking of. Russia, you can traverse and go. OC, in the West, you believe that there are all these restrictions in Russia. You can get anything and everything that you want in Russia. I even found a mall called Galleria Mall in St. Petersburg. You got Gap. Anything, everything that you wanted. I needed to get contact lens solution and a whole bunch of other different things while I was there. So, they took us out and we were able to get the things that we need. So the expectations that I held when I went to Russia, they were completely obliterated, literally, because the country was beautiful, it was clean. The people, like I said, were very embracing. The service industry. We went on a boat trip one night at about 1 a.m, and they opened the bridge. Well, there were a couple of bridges that they opened during that time. And it's clear as day because, you don't get too much darkness, which is why they call it the white nights during that time of year. But it was so scenic, breathtaking. I can't begin to tell you how beautiful it was as an experience.
Okay, folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Stuart Connor. My two co-hosts with me this morning, Dr. Steve McField, Mr. Risa Pitcairn, fresh back from Russia. When we return, we're going to have, after the news, we're going to have one or two members from the Cayman Islands Netball Association with us. They're going to spend about 15 minutes with us talking about the Netball Association as well. So please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back immediately after the news. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, my two co-hosts, Dr. Steve McField and Mr. Risa Pitcairn. We also have in the studio with us this morning Miss Lucille Seymour, who is the president of the Cayman Islands Netball Association, as well as Miss Violet Corbin, who is the technical director with the Cayman Islands Netball Association. Ladies, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And we're going to pass the mic right over to you. Tell us what's happening with netball in the Cayman Islands, where we're at and where we're headed.
I'll need a little more time. But today, this week, we are going to be involved in ranking games. If you want to go up in netball or in any sport, you got to play either in tournaments, international tournaments, or you can arrange with other countries and rank. So you can come from the bottom and go up.
Okay.
And Cayman and Canada will be playing to rank this weekend. And Canada arrived on Sunday to play us. We were not ranked, but we were rated in Scotland in 2015. So we have two more sets of games to play. And I think this might be one set, and then we have another set. I think we'll play the U.S. maybe in another 9 months or something. But netball in Cayman, at the bottom level, the junior level, I think is going real fine. Because of the multiplicity of sports, the attendance at netball is not like how it was when you were a young man, or Miss Teresa was part of it.
Yeah, I made to understand that she, at 13 years old,
Yes.
she was involved
As
in
a matter of
netball.
fact, Teresa is, I think, very, very, I wouldn't use the term athletic, but
And why not?
Very, very sports person, because athletic always tend to narrow your interests, But she's very sports-like, and you can see from the shirt she has on, which is football under 15, which I'm sure maybe her son is in, and that's great that she's advertising that, because I saw quite recently where the attendance was very low at something, and that's unfair to us that call ourselves Caymanians, and that's all we talk about. We're Caymanian. So when the opportunity is for a Cayman team to showcase, like the under 15 or the netball, we're here today to ask people to come to the games. And I know, and you pay for it, because the money you get from the games, you offset for hosting the tournament, because it's not cheap, because the host country bears most of the responsibility.
Okay. I have a question for your technical director. How has netball changed over the years? I remember when I used to watch netball, you would have these fixed positions where, you go to shoot and you have to twist around and you have to do all of those motions. Are we getting to the stage where we're more like basketball now, or is it
No,
still the
we're
same?
not.
No.
Okay, I would actually say it's always been that way, but it just depends who you're watching. Possibly back in the early 80s, it slightly looked static, but it's actually not static. It's what you make of the rules. And what you make of the rules is very similar to basketball. You move. You move, you give, you move, you give, But what's happened over the last maybe 20, 30 years is that coaches have gained a lot more experience from an athletic point of view and combine all the different aspects of athletes on that court. And you'll find that they're very aerial, so they can leap and bound and collect. And the shooters are not statically standing, collecting the ball and, okay, 1, 2, 3, shoot. It's a case that, yes, we can actually just pop it in at any point, anywhere on the court.
But the flexibility of netball has always been there. If you were to watch the Trinidad team, especially, I think they were the ones who really brought in this aerial type of play, and that is what now all of the European countries and the Australian, New Zealand, they all now are aerial there. So it looks as if, well, it's a basketball game, but it's always been, the Caribbean in particular is known for moving up. Cayman might not have done that because I guess sometimes we don't think we're Caribbean. So, but they have always had a great style, Trinidad, and the world took it. And now Africa has Uganda in particular, Malawi has this type of style that we had. Well, I guess it might be our physique. Yeah.
Has international exposure had anything to do with it as well?
Yes. Because the Oceania side, so Australia, New Zealand, Cook Island, Fiji, they have a slight different style to the Europeans, and the Caribbean have a different style again. But the whole thing about it is that you are giving, collecting, shooting. So whichever style you're using, you've got to be able to get the ball from one end to the other using 7 players. You can miss out a couple, but you have to get through to the other side of the court. So it's how you do it. So you manipulate what you've got. If you've got ladies that are tall and can bound, you got to use that skill. If you've got the small ones that can collect down there and those tall ones up there, I'm going to put that ball down there for them. And so you've got to, manipulate for what you've got and the physiques and the skill level of what you've got and working with.
Ms. Teresa, you have any questions?
I only because we started when netball started in Cayman with Millicent Blade, who was from Barbados. She was our PE teacher as well. As you spoke, Molly Ann came straight to my mind. Molly Ann could shoot. I mean, I used to play center, and at that time, they used to think you're too tall to play center, but Miss Blades used to say, don't pay them any mind. You're center, you're fast, you can move, etc. They wanted to put me in defense. Couldn't put me in goal attack because I couldn't shoot to save my life. But Molly Ann could bounce from one area and bang. And she reminded me in many ways, in reflection, of how Michael Jordan could shoot from any place. Molly Ann had that skill.
And our Laverne Davis, I think she's
Laverne
been,
as well.
Oh, she's
Exactly.
been the best
Yeah.
that I have
Yeah.
really seen in
Yeah,
Cayman.
and she could move.
And they have admired her all over the world,
Yeah.
wherever we've taken her all
Yeah.
over the world. You know,
Yeah.
she can go on that line, take a bounce and go fly over.
You give
know,
me
and it's
goosebumps because it's
it's
bringing back those
amazing.
memories. Yeah,
Yes, what she
absolutely
can do.
brilliant. Yeah.
Now, I know the challenges, like most organizations in the Cayman Islands, that you're competing against other activities in the Cayman Islands. Do you find that as a challenge as well? How do we get young ladies involved in the sport here in the Cayman Islands? Get them interested in it and have them realize that it is a sport that they can actually be on the world stage.
Let me make a small point, and then I'll give it to
Sure.
Ms. Corbin. When years ago, when Teresa and those were youngsters, and we brought teachers in, we made a consciousness of hiring teachers that had that as extracurricular.
Mm-hmm.
Today, that's not so. So the game itself, and that's one of the reasons we now have a hired person. Years ago, we had everybody involved as voluntary because teachers were involved. When you have teachers involved in things, it grows. And I'd make that point. And that is why perhaps there's this stunting now of the growth of participation of netball, because we don't have a lot of the technical experience throughout the school system. We have some, but we don't. There's not this consciousness. And I say that because netball is a focus sport. And if netball is a focus sport by the government, then the government or whomever it is has to have a consciousness to ensure that the game is spread and there's a lot of participation.
But Lucille, if I may, you know what it also did? It broke barriers. It developed a certain relationship between us as students and as we grew to become young women. Every time Ms. Blades, for example, and she will always come to mind, visited us, we ensured we had something to represent her, how we loved her, adored her, and valued what she did. That was, and I mean, I used to hear Hartwell Wood talking about this, about the importance of bringing in teachers who have not only that skill to teach, but also broad-based to include certain things like sports. And it really added value to the education process. And I'd like to share that, yeah.
And that's good.
Dr. McPhail, you have any questions?
Well, I'm sitting here listening, but what it seems to me is that I don't think sports get a priority in Cayman Islands. It does in many other countries. Part of the budget goes to sports and to developing sports people and developing competition, people for competition all around the world. Cayman doesn't do that. You have so many schools, and I don't know if you have a netball club in each school where schools are competing against each other. And I just saw the other day where all the athletes came back from the Carifla Games or where it was. And all I saw was a few little lines in a compass saying how many medals they had gotten. But I hadn't seen any parade through the town for them so that people could see them and honor them. And so it's still the same. We're still fighting to get recognized in your own home. A government, and especially when you were in a society where you were boasting that you have so much money and that you were a financial center, you should be the center of excellence in everything. And it seems to me that it's going to be worse now, because it seems to me that some of the people that I see now are in charge of sports and culture, they're not going to put any money into that. I don't understand how you can say that you have $200 million saved, but you're not interested in putting $10 million in that ball to keep people off the streets and to keep young girls from having children and so forth. And so it seems to me that there's no priority. I don't know much about netball. I used to go to the netball field some time ago when I had a friend that used to play netball, and I thought it was a great game for women. but I don't see it moving any further than where it is right now.
Okay.
I'm going to endorse what you've just said, because that is actually the sticking point. If you, as you say, boast that you've got so much saved, put some where the young people can benefit. It's going to be all over, but a little bit for the sporting sector. And you cannot run an organization on a shoestring. You cannot always be asking people, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you? It gets to be a bind. And when you're hosting is supposed to be heartfelt, because you're the one that's putting a lot of effort into it. But at the same time, in doing that, you've got to have the resources in order to give people what they want. And the indigenous people here, the people that's living here, working here, and representing, need to also get some of that benefit. I'm not saying that you're ready for paying the athletes, but you're definitely ready for development, and development is putting some money where your mouth is.
And I say that because when I was young, we had some great athletes, and I saw them all fail. I was a good cricketer, and probably would have played professional cricket too, but I had no idea that you could get paid for doing that. And when I was growing up, and people didn't put any money into it. We did it all ourselves. We had to go and cut the field ourselves and roll the pitch ourselves and things like that. The government didn't think that was important. And so nothing has really changed. Those things that really build societies, that build confidence in people, we don't spend any money on them. We think that what we do, we idolize people with lots of money, and any fool can have money, and any crook can have money too. And so that is my criticism of the sporting procedure in Cayman Islands, and unless we really put money in where it has to be done, because you have to develop people. People have to be developed. It's not only working at a bank and telling people to go out and become a lawyer and make $5 million a year. You have to develop people all around, and like inviting people over to you. That should be something that should be a pleasure for you to invite people in, because it builds confidence in your people, and your people see have contacts all over the world, and so when they travel, they're not despair. They feel confident that they're just as good as anybody else, and our government doesn't do that.
Now, the ranking and the ratings, I'd like you again to explain to our listening audience and tell us where that will take the Cayman Islands. Whether or not it will be a psychological lift, an emotional lift to your players as well, in terms and a motivation as well in terms of where you ranked.
Before I go there, I just want to say that I grew up in netball, raising money. All over the world that happens. Governments give money, but what England did, England has a lottery, so the English netball gets part of that lottery. Now, we're not going to do that. And they can go all over the world, and they'll have a lot of money. I also think, and this I'll say, because I don't want to go too far into this. Another time we can do that. I'll also say that there in terms of proportion, I think there's money given to sports. Does it go to netball? No. But you see, that's because, let's say football, let's be real. Football has gotten a lot of money from governments over the years. I've been there, so I can say so. I've been the permanent secretary, so I know. I think that we have to try to treat women and men equally. And I'll leave it at that. If we treat them equally, life will be different for us,
but
especially in sports.
We also seen football, as far as females are concerned, excelling in the Cayman Islands as well.
But they have the same issues we have too.
Okay.
You just don't. They have the same issues that netball have. Getting the funds, getting to go places. because money has to be given to all sides. But I think we could talk about another time in terms of the ranking.
Okay, what we're going to do? We're going to take a commercial break.
Okay.
We're going to have a little bit longer than I promised.
Yes, because
so we'll probably have another 10 minutes, to talk.
We'll
go
some
until
time to push the games.
Sure. What we'll do is we'll go until our 8:45 break. So we're going to take a commercial break now, and we'll have you on until 8:45. Folks, please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. It is a pleasure to have in the studio with us for this segment Miss Lucille Seymour, who is the president of the Cayman Islands Netball Association, as well as Miss Violet Corbin, who is the technical director for the Cayman Islands Netball Association. We're talking netball, but in particular we're talking about Cayman's effort to be ranked amongst its other competitors as well. Going to pass the mic back over to Miss Lucille and Miss Corbin now.
Okay, when it comes to the ranking, there's a type of formula to the ranking system. But to summarize, what it is that you've got to play 8 games internationally before you can have a ranked position. As such, we haven't. Cayman has played 6 already, and we're having to play 2 more. So our first 2 matches that we're playing against Canada, Thursday and Friday, those are theoretically our part of the ranked system. Now, what's good about what's happening right now is that Cayman is actually in a win-win situation. Even if we lose against Canada in the test series coming up in 3 games, we still get our ranking. If we win, we take some of Canada's points. So we take 50 points away from Canada, and then we go forward in a ranked position. Now, I'm not sure where we will be on the ranked table because there's other games going on with other countries. So once that they tally it at end of each month, because there's been about 4 games in the Americas, which is where our region is. So America's played Bermuda. There's been Jamaica against Barbados and so forth. So we've had all of those. So we've got to wait for all of those to finish for the month before we will get our ranked position. So you're going to have to wait a little while to get that. At the moment, 34th is Argentina. So I'd like to be a bit ahead of that. And presently, presently Canada is at 26th. So we'd definitely like to take some points away from Canada. So that's where we are in the scheme of things from a ranking position.
Would you say that netball is or has been dominated more by the Commonwealth countries? Because we're hearing some names like the United States and Argentina. We hear it like in cricket as well, where these countries, I guess because of the size of their populations, they can easily, draw from, so many skills there, which puts us at a disadvantage in terms of our size and our population.
Yes and no, because remember that Trinidad beat tied with Australia and New Zealand in 79, and Jamaica has been running third and
Sunshine
and
Girls,
fourth.
yes.
Third and fourth.
But Jamaica has taken a different
trajectory
tack to development of sports than we have. Australia is certainly dominant. I mean, Australia and New Zealand, they no one can beat them. No one can beat them in anything when it comes to netball. You would have to, I don't know, produce your own.
Ooh, that's kind of fatalist.
No. I've been there twice in 24 years. And the last time I went was 2 years ago, last year. And I'm telling you, they're just dominant.
But remember,
they're consumed with that sport and development. That sport is almost outside of cricket now.
Okay.
But bear in mind, the colonialists taught us cricket too, and we ended up, dominating and beating them.
Absolutely.
Eventually.
But money talks. Money talks.
Okay. In terms of the question you've said about the Commonwealth countries, and you're now here in USA, yes, the Commonwealth countries are obviously the first countries to take on netball because it's a British sport. So that's the first thing. The next thing is to make the sport more worldwide. And so yes, we've now got loads of European countries who are not a part of the Commonwealth. That's now netball ranked. We got places over Hong Kong, Singapore, in the Asia countries that are not part of the Commonwealth, and
Philippines.
also you've got this side where you've not got people that USA, not a part of the Commonwealth, Argentina and so forth. So we have 74 countries involved in netball, and we are looking for more. So it's to keep it going. Loads of countries in Africa are now a part of netball. So it's fantastic news for our sport to get it out there. Botswana will be hosting the under-21s this weekend.
Starting this week.
And that's just fantastic for Africa. So yes, we're getting there, and we'll be a part of the Olympic sport as soon as we can get up to whatever number they want.
Okay. Now, what can
So
the
is
Cayman
there a
Islands?
season for netball?
Yes,
Yes.
It's runs almost with soccer, which
Okay.
is September to
Yeah.
to
About May.
So
Yeah.
so we have I think the Jamaican national team is called the Sunshine Girls.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So why is it that Jamaica is only 200 miles away from us? Why don't we play more matches there to get more experience and more competition?
Just for 1 second, I'll
Can I-
tell
can I-
you
can
one
I-
of the reason why I think
I'm not
we
so sure the
can't.
coach knows that reason.
I
but-
probably don't know, but I'm just talking from what I know now, is that our people would need to Cayman will need to have $500 in their bank account to even start to go across that water. For me, that was a problem.
But why $500?
I say five because it's a round figure and it's whatever the price of an airline ticket.
It should be free.
Well, you talk to the airlines, you talk to your government,
Government,
and
yes,
that's,
yes, the
you know,
funding.
that before
It's
we
not,
even
it's not as
started.
simple as
It
that.
should be
I don't
free-
want
it
to
should- it
differ
should-
with,
it should-
with the
it should
coach,
be
but and
Our
there are
national
some
team
things
should
not
fly free on our
preferred.
national airlines.
But if we just stay on simple things,
Yes.
we will be okay. I understand why we're not with Jamaica, and that has nothing to do with us. We talk in when we meet at INF or our world body, and when we meet at AFNA, how countries that are more developed than others should adopt other countries. That doesn't go so well. That doesn't go, this adoption. So you're not able to get more developed even though you might be just a stone's throw away. Because remember, Jamaica is very, very international. I can tell you this. And also, the Jamaican government puts a lot of money, and the Jamaican private sector puts a lot of money in netball. So they want all of that to be there. We get technical advice from Jamaica. Yes, we would really like to go more to visit, but there are other issues. And the Netball Association here, over the years, has spent its entire life fundraising.
Okay. Now we have just a couple of minutes, so one more question. What can the Cayman Islands public do to help you in terms of your confidence, support
Come to the games.
with this ranking?
We would really and
Effort.
truly love for at least our seats filled. We've got 300 seats per night, and we'd love that to be filled. And we are, asking people to come. It's $10 per adult, $5 for under 10s. Come, bring your scarves, your colors, your flags, wave. Let's have fun out there. That's what we want. We want the Cayman team to feel supported.
Okay.
We're also hoping to have live streaming on Facebook. So that would be another attraction if we're totally full. At least you can data up and watch it on Facebook.
But I'm sponsoring a bus for 3 days. So the bus will go to the credit union, 5:30 on a Thursday, a Friday, and a Saturday. And if you want to go to the games, you park your car. If you don't feel comfortable or if you don't have a car, the Rennie Barnes bus will be there to take you, but you have to pay to get into the...
Okay, so we want to wish you all the best in your efforts, and next time when you return here, we'd like to know exactly where you are ranked.
Yes, we forgot to tell you that it's
Sure.
at Clifton Hunter High School.
Okay, Clifton Hunter High School as well. Okay.
Thank
Great.
you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us, folks. I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorrit Connor. My guest in the studio with me this morning for this segment, we had Miss Lucille Seymour, president of the Cayman Islands Netball Association, and Miss Violet Corbin, who is the technical director. And, of course, my co-hosts in the studio with me, Dr. Steve Macfield and Miss Teresa Pitcairn. Please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me now, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn and Dr. Steve Macfield. One of our listeners wanted Dr. Steve Macfield and wanted us to repeat about the Constitution. The person says they know about the 1972 Constitution. They wanted to hear a little bit more about the 1959 Constitution. And while we're at it, we can also talk about the 1962 Constitution and the 1965 Constitution, which in effect was the 1962 Constitution, but because it had never been presented to the House of Lords, it was not deemed to have come into effect, or sort of, as well. So, Dr. Macfield, to you.
Well, let me say again that the last sitting of the old Legislative Assembly of Justices in Westray was on the 3rd of July, 1959. And the first written constitution of the Cayman Islands came into effect on the 4th of July, 1959, the day after the last sitting of the old Westray, when we had no constitution. Now, because the 4th of July fluctuates on different days, sometimes it's on Wednesday, it's on Thursday, and sometimes it's on Tuesday, and our government wants to make that day a holiday. Our government has selected the first Monday in July to celebrate the Constitution Day, but the real day is the 4th of July. That's the day the Constitution came into effect, and so our Constitution Day would have been yesterday, on the 4th of July. Yesterday, it's the same day as the American Day of Independence, Independence Day. Mm-hmm. So that is how we celebrate our Constitution. The 4th of July, 1959, was the day that our first written Constitution came into effect, and that's what we call our Constitution Day, and it's the 4th of July.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the 1962 Constitution.
Well, I know you and I differ about the 1962 Constitution. Okay. Because they say that the 1962 Constitution was not laid before the upper house in England. Mm-hmm. But I believe, when I look at the history of how that Constitution was supposed to come into effect, the same day as the Jamaican Constitution was supposed to come into effect, and it never did. And all the controversy about becoming a crown colony in 1962, mm-hmm. I believe that Constitution was not laid before the House, particularly because they did not want Mr. Ormond to be the first chief minister. I believe that. There could not have been a mistake that the British forgot to lay something like a constitution before one of their houses of parliament. I don't believe that at all.
Now, so you do you believe then that because I haven't had a chance to really look closely at this part of it, that the 1962 Constitution, and when you look at what was brought into effect in 1965, that they differed somewhat? They
differed a little, mm-hmm. with the nomination of candidates and election of candidates, but they were almost the same, and so. And this substantiates what I'm saying. If you did not, or you forgot not to lay the 1962 Constitution before the House, how could you forget to set the 1965 Constitution, which is done the 3 years after that? Mm-hmm. You would have corrected your mistake. And remember, the Christian Democrats and the National Democrats again went to the polls in 1965. And I think that the British government was scared that the National Democrats would have won that election also. And they didn't put that constitution into effect, waiting to see who was going to win. And when the National Democrats did not win, they did not put a new constitution into effect at all until 1972. Some 10 years after the 1962 constitution was not laid before Parliament, before the House of Lords.
And what is important that would like you to stress for our listening and viewing audience as well, that these constitutional changes, a lot of them came as a result of the impetus from the United Kingdom, not necessarily
Exactly.
from our own here. And we saw what happened between 1972 and 2009.
They had to push us. They had to push us to have those changes, because it was during the white paper. During the white paper that they said you have to modernize your constitution. You have to move forward, and we were reluctant to move forward. Even the amendments to the constitution, didn't come from us, but it come from them. The Grand Court in the Constitution, the Court of Appeal, all of those amendments to the Constitution between 1972 and 2009.
Well,
all of those amendments came from the British government and not necessarily by us at all.
Yeah, except for those relating to qualifications for elected membership
yes.
in the Legislative Assembly, as well as qualifications to be an elector.
Yes.
I do recall,
Yes.
for instance, the Young Caymanian Businessmen's Association, which is no longer in existence, but at that time in the 80s and in the 80s, very strong about voter registration and eligibility for voting in our legislature, voting in our elections, as well as membership in our legislature, because the Young Cayman Businessmen's Association felt that it is something that should be preserved for Caymanians. Only those persons with Caymanian connections. Hence, we saw things being put in there like the fact that you had to be a British dependent territorial citizen by virtue of a connection with the islands and
Yes.
things of that nature.
But how do you contrast that with the fact that a lot of us were lobbying to have a definition of the Caymanian in the Constitution, and a lot of our people didn't stand for that, didn't put that forward, because if a majority of the people who were there at the constitutional talks and who saw that was very important to us would have done that also.
Okay.
And so the Constitution came away again without a definition of who we are, and how you define a Caymanian.
Mr. Risa, we want you to get involved in this conversation as well. Your observations.
As you guys were speaking, I actually reflected back to the days when I was in the on the CBA Council, and when these conversations would rear its head, indeed, when I was chairing the CBA Council at the time, and it wasn't clear to me at that time and subsequently whether or not our leadership were able. Well, they had mixed determinations about what was truly important at the end of the day, is perhaps the way that I would express it. And today we are now having this conversation that we started ages ago about how we value ourselves and how our leaders value us. Because if our leaders valued us, some of the decisions that we made with respect to the Constitution perhaps would be a little different. Ezra, you always hear some of our MLAs, and in particular, Mr. Miller, speaking about discussing independence, and we were still very sensitive with that issue. And more recently, certainly while I was in Russia, and every now and again when I had an opportunity, I would look at the CNS and the Compass and other media, and I saw that we are going to have perhaps a new governor. And what was interesting was the commentary on the blogs about the new governor. And again, it gave me a moment for pause to consider how we view ourselves, whether or not we want to be the masters in our own homes, how we view others that are here to act in that role of governance, and what plans do we have either way, whether we remain as a dependent territory or whether we take steps gradual steps to become independent. So I am not necessarily going to share my personal views about this, but it seems to me that we need to have some real discussions about how we envision our future.
Well, one of the things that bothers me in the Constitution is how the Constitution is supposed to be the supreme law of the land. It's the first law of the land. And how could it say that you have to refer to an inferior law to say what a Caymanian is? You see, it says that a Caymanian is what the immigration law say it is. The immigration law should say a Caymanian is what the Constitution say it is, and not the other way around. And that, to me, that's a slap in the face, and it shows that we do not have a priority at all about our own people, and that is one of the drawbacks of the kind of people who were at the time around the table, not getting the best deal for the Cayman Islands, and it seems to me that we have to go further and define who we are as a people.
But you see, that again, it comes back to the point that I was raising about when we choose leaders, what those leaders stand for, and whether or not they value us enough. Those of us who go to the electorate go to the polls each year, put that X there and give them that opportunity to lead. It's okay for us to, give them that opportunity. But the question is, when they make decisions, are those decisions truly in our best interest? Do they put us front and center of those decisions? Mm-hmm. And do they value us enough? And I mean, I have to keep going back to that word value. How our leaders see us once they are elected, because a lot of the decisions that are made and reflected in our laws don't speak to the way in which we ought to be valued and be first in our own island. So, and this is not something that is a rocket science, OC. We see it, we know it, we feel it. You don't have to be an intellectual to know how you experience your everyday life when you're here.
Okay, we're going to a commercial break now. Please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back after headline news. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Constitution, and then we're going to touch base on the whole issue of permanent residence. Of course, we won't be able to cover all that we planned on covering on that today, but certainly Friday is another day, and God's willing, with all of us still above ground, we will continue to discuss it as well. We were talking about the 2003 draft Constitution. I believe that there was a definition of Caymanian that was placed in that draft.
Yeah, I think there was a definition. There was a definition of Cayman was based in that draft, but of course that draft didn't see the light of day. It didn't come in. You remember all the controversy about it, and that draft was just a draft. It was not implemented, and notwithstanding that in 2009, a lot of things in the 2003 Constitution was transferred into the 2009 Constitution. That definition of a Caymanian was not put in there. Now, the 1992 Constitution draft also is void of a definition for Caymanian. It had the fundamental rights and freedoms, the Bill of Rights, but it does not have a definition of what a Caymanian is. They left it out. When the commissioners sent back this draft from England, they left out what was the definition of the Caymanian. And you think that even though we're not a nation, we're not an independent country, at least there should be a definition of who we are as a people. So really, what all we are is a British overseas country, territory citizens. That's what we are still. But there's no definition of Caymanian. So all of us now are just people with Caymanian status. And so that would bring us then to how do you get Caymanian status? You get Caymanian status by Caymanian connections. You get Caymanian status as of right by Caymanian connections. You get Caymanian status by birth, and you get Caymanian status by long residence. And so those are the things now that we're in trouble with, because we have all of these court cases going to the court, and we have all of these backlog of people now waiting to get permanent residence so that they can become Caymanians in the end. And so all because we refuse to say who our Caymanians are.
Now, talking about court cases, let's switch gears and go to the whole issue of permanent residence. It appears as if most of the challenges that are being brought in terms of judicial review has to do with the length of time that it has taken the Status and Permanent Residency Board to deal with the applications, more so than any decision that has been made, because those challenges in relation to a refusal or an approval would have to be submitted to the Immigration Appeals Tribunal. So it appears as if these judicial reviews has to do with process.
Well, a lot of those judicial reviews come from the Immigration Appeal Tribunal, because the Immigration Law 2015 says that if you are dissatisfied by the decision of the Immigration Tribunal, you can apply to the Grand Court for judicial review on appeal to the Grand Court. You can either do it two ways. You can either appeal to the Grand Court under the Grand Court rules, or you can apply by judicial review. And so some of the cases that you see are before the Grand Court are for judicial review, and some of them are coming from appeals against the Immigration Tribunal.
Got you.
For refusing the applications, and some of them for not hearing the applications on a timely manner.
Okay. Now, Mr. Risa, there are those, including myself, and I would say that Dr. Steve McField shares the same sentiment, that we have reached the point now where we need to restrict the acquisition of Caymanian status to grounds of marriage, grounds of descent, and not strictly on the length of time that you have resided in the Cayman Islands, based on the fact that you also have become a British Overseas Territories citizen, that we have to restrict it. The same way that we need to protect Caymanians in other aspects in relation to work and everything else, that we need, in order for us to retain our identity here in the Cayman Islands, that we cannot continue to allow every Tom, Dick, and Harry and Jane who arrives in the Cayman Islands on a work permit to feel that they are given a pathway to Caymanian status by virtue of being here on a work permit. We need not only to dispel that thought, but we need to ensure that it is enshrined in legislation.
Right. So my question would be, how do the politicians view that? Because, you could, with respect, let's go back historically. The immigration law has always been clear about what you're capable of accessing by way of status once you get here, right? There was no guarantee, one, that you would have your work permits renewed.
Right.
There was no guarantee that even once those work permits were renewed successively, that actually enabled you to have a certain right or expectation, or if having that expectation was an abuse of your human rights, right? So folks, when they come to the island, they have a responsibility to themselves and their families about the personal decisions that they make, right? So, let's put this where the responsibility rests. So when folks come and have a certain expectation, they must know why they have that expectation, because certainly the immigration law didn't really give them that expectation. So that's one issue. The second thing is the politicians and their view. And I think some of the times they try to weigh economic value and the economic buoyance of the community against the value and worth of the Caymanian, because that's what seems to be now, what we're trying to discover, how folks feel. Caymanians have been saying that our politicians historically, with the decisions that they make it literally impossible for them to have a view about, for example, getting things like gainful employment. So, you have that situation where you have a predominance of work permits and you have Caymanians being unemployed. You have that view about you need to increase the population in order for Caymanians to have an expectation to get a job. You also have that view about when businesses open here, they take a risk. So they ought to have a say in who they employ. So there are all these conversations going on at the same time. But when we look at other communities, we see that, they make decisions where they put their own community first, their own people first. So I would invite our leaders to consider how they value us as a people, number one, and to see how the community is going to respond, because we have seen what has happened historically, and I don't know if there's going to be a change. So it's really up to the Caymanian people to have a view about how they see themselves and whether or not they're going to hold their leaders responsible.
Okay. I'm going to divert a little bit because we always want to pay attention to our listeners. One listener has said, can we, you inquire what Dr. Macfield thinks about the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, the Honorable W. McKeever Bush, being party leader of the CDP, as well as being a speaker in our Legislative Assembly. So we're diverting a little bit.
That's Mr. Bush has a problem. But he has a problem on the one hand, but he doesn't have a problem on the other hand.
Okay.
Because as the Speaker of the House, Mr. Bush has to be neutral, and he cannot take part in any active part in the political action at all in his constituency or in the legislature or outside the House. He has to be completely constitutionally neutral, because that's what the role of the Speaker is. So he has to give up the leadership of his party. He cannot be Speaker and still leader of the CDP. And therefore, it seems to me that once he gives up leadership of his party, that the party will become extinct, because I don't see anyone in the CDP. I don't see the deputy leader of the party, and I don't see the deputy Speaker of the House, and also the other member of the CDP who's now consumed by the PPM being able to revive the party. And let's face the facts. The party does not have any national appeal. They're in two consecutive elections. They were only able to win 3 seats in the geographical district of West Bay. They were only able to win three electoral districts in West Bay, and so that party is sort of gone. It's sort of gone unless somebody come in other than the members in the Legislative Assembly and try to revive it.
Now, what would be the legal basis for him not being able to be Speaker? Would it be the rules of the Legislative Assembly? Would it be the constitution of the party's constitution that would disbar him from being the Speaker and also being...
It's the conventions of the Constitution.
Okay.
It's not set down in the Constitution, but it's set down in the conventions of the Constitution and the history of the role of a Speaker.
Okay.
Traditionally, the role of a Speaker has to be completely neutral. And in England, really the Speaker doesn't take part. He doesn't even campaign for his seat in the Legislative Assembly, because that seat in his district is automatically without contest, that he doesn't have to take part in confrontational politics. And so that has developed, and we adopt the Westminster system, and so the Westminster system also applies to us. So Mr. Bush now cannot have any active role in politics, especially in a party system in which he's the leader. I hope that he has given up the leadership of the party, because that would be contrary to being a Speaker of the House.
Okay, Mr. Risa, any observations from you from a legal standpoint on that? Don't want to leave you out.
Dr. Macfield said it all.
Okay, let's go to a commercial break now, Ms. Susan. When we return, we will touch base again on permanent residents. And in order to do that, we're going to look at we can touch base in terms of the laws that preceded, the immigration laws that preceded the Caymanian Protection Law 1971. We can look at the laws that preceded that. But really, the one that had the impact was the Cayman Islands Protection Law 1971. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. Before I come to you, Ms. Theresa, we have one caller on hold. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. O.C.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Miss Theresa.
Morning, Miss Georgia.
Good morning, Dr. Maxfield.
Good morning, ma'am.
I trust that all three of you in there and all your family members are well.
And the same
I
to
am
you.
so grateful God gave me another day and all my family members are well so far.
Thank you.
I'm learning so much this morning. They always say that you're never too old to learn. And I always listen intently when Dr. Maxfield talks about, things pertaining to history and politics. But, Miss Teresa, I must thank you most sincerely because of you speaking about Caymanians being valued as a people. Oh, I can't thank you enough. And it seems to me that government after government seems to not really think about us. And that is really sad. I know I have great value in the sight of God and in the sight of my family. They value me too and many dear friends. But I so enjoyed the way you spoke, Miss Teresa. And I am so glad that you told us a little bit about your visit all the way up there to Russia. One of my oldest granddaughter went there once,
Wow.
and she enjoyed it so much too. So, thank the three of you, Mr. O.C., Ms. Teresa, and Dr. Maxfield, for trying to enlighten our people. And one question before I hang up now.
Sure.
If ever the three of you can answer it, about how many Caymanians, I mean born Caymanians of the soil, do we have? I would like very much to know that. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Georgette, for that.
Thanks.
I'll look that up. We can go on to the Economics and Statistics website. I think we should be able to find that information. But Ms. Teresa, you posed a question earlier when we talked about the restriction of the acquisition of Caymanian status only on grounds to be acquired only on grounds of marriage and Caymanian connection, descent. And you said, what do our politicians think about it? Well, we had an election on the 24th of May of this year. And before that election, there were many people on platforms making promises and saying what they wanted to do to assist Caymanians, what they wanted to do to help Caymanians. There are people who feel that it is an affront for people who have been allowed to come here and work to now challenge the government in relation to the granting of permanent residence. And I understand the legal points under which they're doing it because it has to do with process, and they're certainly entitled, they have that legal right, to do so. But what about the Caymanian public? Does public opinion have anything to do with the direction that our politicians decide to go on this very, very urgent issue that needs to be addressed?
When we spoke some weeks ago, OC, I spoke about the social contract that our leaders have between us and them. When we go to the polls, we go with the assumption that those folks are going to keep their promises when they enter office. But we have known for many, many, many succeeding, successive governments that they say one thing to campaign and to get elected. I mean, we know that. So, the question is, what will Caymanians tolerate? That's it. Just I mean, we're gonna have to disagree. I mean, we had a conversation when we were off the mic, and the way one shapes public sentiments by giving them information, and which is something that I know that we're trying to do to educate our community as best as we can, and through some type of dialogue. But at the end of the day, OC and Dr. Macfield, we can talk and talk and talk and talk, but it's really up to the Caymanian people to define who they are and to ensure that the politicians actually do what they promised to do when they went to the polls. So the question is, will the Caymanian public hold the community, the leaders accountable? Now, as I said before, or as I tried to suggest, there are many, many complex issues that I think the politicians are trying to weigh and to try to come to some type of decision which they believe is balanced. The question that Caymanians have is whether or not those decisions that they deem balanced actually represent and reflect what they want in terms of how the island should evolve. Where is the plan, OC, about what we're going to do? Where is the plan that talks about the number of kids that we have in school, the kind of economy that we want, how many people we're going to need to man the economy, and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. So are we as a community going to ensure that our politicians keep their promise, and those promises in particular that puts us front and center of the decisions and show how much we are valued? So that's my thing. I know Steve has a different view, but that's where I put it.
Okay, Dr. Macfield?
I maintain that people don't understand the whole political spectrum, how it works. They believe that once they elect a person, and they leave it to that person. But you don't leave it to that person, because the person works for you. The person is not elected to go and do what he wants to do, because it's not his job. The job belongs to the people of the Cayman Islands. They pay the salary. And the laws that he makes has to reflect the wishes of the Caymanian people and their best interests. And that is why I differ from and fall out with a lot of politicians, because as soon as they get elected, that evening they get elected, you don't see them again. And the people don't see them again. And then they go about doing the business of other people. And it seems to me that what I'm trying to do on this radio station here is trying to educate the Caymanian people politically of what they can do and what they can't do. And so that is my aim. And so here you have this dilemma where politicians for years and years and years have not made a decision to protect their own people, and allow this whole debacle, this whole fiasco to develop and manifest itself now, where we are going to court now to fight now the Caymanian people to become citizens of, or not citizens but residents of Cayman Islands, and to have Caymanian status. That should have never happened, because we should have enforced the law as it was, because the law clearly says that if you come here in a work permit, if you come here as a visitor, you should not solicit or engage in any work. And so many times you see people doing that. They come here and they solicit work and they engage in work, and then they come to the immigration department with an application. Well, they shouldn't be able to do that. If they want to make an application, they should have to go back and do it from their own home. Like I have put forward so many illustrations. I would talk again about the nurses who came from Australia and New Zealand some time ago in the United States, when the United States was short of nurses. There was something of 5,000 of them from New Zealand and Australia. And after they had put in their 5 years work permit, in America, in the hospitals in which they came for. They applied to stay on, and the American government said, no, you can't stay on. If you want to come back to America, you have to go back to your country and apply through the embassies to get a green card like everybody else.
Okay.
And so we have to start telling our people that they have a right to protect themselves, and they have the right to have politicians to work for them and not for other people.
Okay, we have one caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC. Good morning, Mr. Racer and Dr. Steve McPhail.
Good morning, sir.
I'm listening to this, and I love listening to that. I told you the other day that it's best show on TV. I mean, best show on radio.
Thank you.
On TV, too, as far as I'm concerned. But the thing is that I notice things all the time. I see things. They say actions speak louder than words sometimes. And I'm looking at the local papers, the recent papers today and yesterday, I think. And we're talking about this film festival and stuff like that, and what was going on and all the other things that happened. And I'm not a person that likes to talk about these things, but when I see things, I think I should speak about it. But tell me how many people of color or Caymanians or people that you know when you look at these papers now and you see all the color photographs with all of these people and everybody's white. You think there's something going on in Cayman because it is so prosperous now that certain people, well, that's what they do, you see. Don't get me wrong. It happened every place in the world that when things were going good, you see these people coming in and they start taking over. And that's what's happening in Cayman, but nobody's talking about that. And I hope that as Steve was talking about, you remember the days of Boy Scouts and stuff like that. What happened to we Caymanians that we don't speak out when we see things? Because when you let things slide, it just starts to grow on itself and it gets big, and then it gets to the point where it's out of control and you can't do anything about it. You see, we are a little tiny island, and it's easy to take it over if people are so determined. And I've spoken to people who have made comments about, you listen to them talking among themselves and talking about what they want to do and what we should do and how this is. And until we get a policy in Cayman that says, if it's not good for Caymanians, if Caymanians aren't benefiting from it, then we don't want it. Because we must have first preference in this island.
Excellent point, and certainly highly endorse that. We'll give you an opportunity to comment on that. Both of my co-hosts here. We're going to take one more caller. We are short on time, so caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, Mr. O.C.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning to those two wonderful daughter and son of the soil, giving us all this information, giving us their powerful viewpoints. Courage, that word courage, is what has happened to us. We must remember long Celia. She got up and
yes. She and before you even go any further, you're giving me goosebumps. We ought to have a statue of her in the center of Georgetown to speak to her history and what she truly represents.
It belonged to my great uncle, Thomas Knowles Eden.
Okay.
That's who she belonged to. Tried right in his house, father's house. But I just say that's what has happened to us. Now we get a more subtle way. It's no flogging no more. When it may come back, we don't know. But no,
mental
two of you,
flogging.
and especially two of you may be flogged. Would have been flogged for what you say. Yeah, but courage, and that word, as you said it, Mr. Macfield, Dr. Macfield, so eloquently. We need to define, I've been saying it for years, who and what is a Caymanian. It should be defined in the Constitution, not by immigration law. The Constitution, for God's sake. Thank you all very much. I listen on. I've reached a stage where I've given up hope. Thank you.
Don't give up hope yet. Don't give up hope yet, caller. Back to you, or folks. Comments?
The thing is, we are our worst enemies, OC and Steve, and you know, it seems as though we have this expectation that somebody out there, I don't know who that somebody out there is going to solve our problems for us, as if we don't have responsibility to or to own the state in which we now find ourselves. You know, somebody got to take responsibility. If after successive elections we choose the same people over and over and over and over again, and we say we want something different, I don't know. You know, it's like listening to Donald Trump when he said he was going to drain the swamp, right? And you see he's now populated his administration with people from Goldman Sachs, the same people that he said he won't drain out.
Yes.
Politicians lie. They lie to get elected. I mean, it's a fact. I mean, it's an obvious fact, right? So we as a community have to own that, but we can't keep waiting on somebody else to come out there and do something for us. We have to own this and start doing something for ourselves. You know, I don't blame the politicians at all. If they feel they can get away with it and they have gotten away with it for so long, why not?
Okay. I just want to say to one of our callers, Mrs. Georgia, that I'm browsing through the Economics and Statistics website. Don't have those figures for her yet. We will have them on Friday if I'm unable to do so before the show ends. I want to give an opportunity for a final comment, starting with Dr. Steve
Stick a
Macfield.
pin, though. Caymanians, the way they have been described historically in this ESO, may not give her the answers that she wants.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. Excellent point.
I
Doctor?
just want to say that my priority is to try to enlighten the Caymanian people of the political system, how it works, the economic system, how it works. As I am not an economist, but I have a good idea, and I can transfer my knowledge to other systems of how they work and what they have to do to be able to have compatibility and in their own country. I have never seen in a country other than those that have been run by dictators and overrun by warlords and things like that, are people who are sort of displaced in their own country. I see people in Syria and in Libya and all those places displaced in their own country, but not in the Cayman Islands, which has been a peaceful and continued to do a politically peaceful country all through its historical existence. And what it seems to me is that we have politician after politician come and they fail to understand that more is not better than enough. That's all they want is more lucre, as Mr. Ormond put it in those days. More lucre, more money in their pockets, and they fail to become nation builders and to build a society where the people can live in dignity and die in dignity. And that is the problem that we have, and that is what, whatever days I have left in me, that is what I'm trying to do, so that I can leave a better place behind me than the one that now exists.
Any closing comments from you, Mr.
Just to
Risa?
underscore what Dr. Macfield said just now, the idea of nation building, and of course, I'm thinking too of the role that sports play. Nation building. That is something. Let's talk about what it takes to build a nation, because it seems as though we have actually forgotten about that. As we speak in these next few days, these coming days and weeks, let us try and talk really about the ingredients of nation building. Thanks very much for that, Dr. Macfield.
Okay. Let me just read this. Just coming upon it now, and I don't want to wait until Friday. Good morning. One of the observations I made as I did my own personal analysis of the last election was the extent to which the various groups had a national appeal, as evidenced by the number of persons voting for their candidates. I disagree with Mr. Macfield on the Mr. McFreel, on the non-relevance of the CDP. In 11 of the 19 constituencies, that party garnered a total of roughly 3,500 votes, a figure that indicates that they still enjoy good support amongst Caymanian voters. Add to that the possibility that many who voted where the CDP did not field a candidate would have voted for their candidates had they placed one in all constituencies, and you have a situation where the CDP potentially enjoys the support of over 40% of the electorate. That is not a dead party. Some Caribbean parties have come back from seemingly obliteration to form the government of their countries. Don't write off the CDP just yet. And also, the Cayman Islands needs a viable opposition party to balance their political thoughts. Very quickly, Dr. Steve, give you an opportunity to very quickly respond to that.
The CDP fought two successive elections, and out of 19 seats, and 18 seats have only been able to get 3 seats. And now their leader of the party is the Speaker of the House, and their deputy leader is the Deputy Speaker of the House, and the other member now is consumed in the CDP. How are they going to come back? How are they going to come back? Okay. I posed that question to the person.
Right, as a rhetorical question. Yeah.
And the only thing I agree with that person is that we need a good opposition party, and it's up to now to the independents now to form an opposition party. What I've noticed that the opposition now has started to form the opposition under the Westminster model of what an opposition is. And I hope that they go further and form a party system, because I have, as I have said before, and I'll say it again, the Westminster model of parliamentary government is party systems.
Okay. Very quickly, Ms. Susan, I'm going to beg for a little bit more time. I want to just give Ms. Georgette some figures that I've found so far. What I've found, and I will look for more, the end of year population estimates by district and status. And that is in 2015, it showed that Georgetown had a population, the total population was 60,413, something like that, for the islands. Georgetown, with a population of 31,303, represented 51%. The number of Caymanians, 15,000 plus. The number of non-Caymanians, 15,000 plus. West Bay, 11,000 number of Caymanians, 6,000 non-Caymanians, 4,000 plus. Bordentown, number of Caymanians, 7,800 plus. Non-Caymanians, 4,100 plus. East End, number of Caymanians, 1,000 plus. Number of non-Caymanians, 476. North Side, number of Caymanians, 1,208. Number of non-Caymanians, 313. Sister Islands, number of Caymanians, 1,496. Non-Caymanians, 698. I know those figures are coming off fast. I'll do some more research on that and get that to Ms. Georgette as well. Folks, I want to thank you for allowing Radio Cayman, and by extension For the Record, into your homes, into your places of work, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands. I also want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to We're the Charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want. I say to you, have a great day. I want to thank my co-host in the studio with me this morning again, and I say to you, prepare for another exciting day on Friday when we return. Have a great day. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman, and as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these 3 wonderful, beautiful Cayman Islands.
Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record.